Welcome to Our College, Your Voices. I'm your host, Kara Monroe. This is the second in our special series of thought leader interviews. This special series of interviews is designed to help prepare college leaders for a future visioning activity taking place in the summer of 2021. We are adding all of these interviews where the participants have allowed it so that our entire college community has the opportunity to hear these. In this episode, PJ McGrew, Executive Director of the Governor's Workforce Cabinet, shares his thoughts on the future of work. I particularly appreciated PJ's thoughts on stackable credentials, the need for alignment between business and education outcomes, and the role that automation plays in all of our futures. If you listened to the first in our series of interviews, the one with Alexandra Whittington, you'll notice that automation has already come up as a theme in both of those interviews. And now let's hear from PJ. Please introduce yourself and your organization and tell us a little bit about your role.
Yeah, so my name is PJ McGrew. I'm the Executive Director of the Governor's Workforce Cabinet. The Governor's Workforce Cabinet serves as the state's workforce board. Every state is required by federal law to have a state workforce board. Here in Indiana, we've gone a little above and beyond what the federal law requires, and we are really charged with creating alignment across the entire pre-K through career talent development ecosystem. And, we're just really excited to have that collaboration across state agencies, our external stakeholders, which includes Ivy Tech. President Ellspermann is on the Governor's Workforce Cabinet, as well as the number of employers that are a part of the cabinet.
So tell us a little bit about the big problem or big problems that you're trying to solve.
Yeah, so I think, primarily we are really trying to ensure that collaboration across state agencies that play a role in the talent development space. We tend to create programs at times that are siloed off within each of the agencies, and sometimes they bump up against each other. So really trying to make sure that as we're moving programs forward, that there is that alignment. We're leveraging state resources and federal resources appropriately and really working toward getting people into education and training that aligns to where the demands and wages are here in Indiana so that we're providing folks with an opportunity of upward economic mobility. I'd say also setting the strategic vision for that alignment of programs. That is really what our role is, setting that vision, then allowing the agencies that administer the programs to then go forth and implement those programs, working with a number of external stakeholders, our local workforce boards and that federal workforce system, Ivy Tech, and our career and technical education centers. The cabinet is also charged with overseeing the CTE or career and tech ed ecosystem for the state and making sure that is aligned and moving forward. So in our last strategic plan, which was just approved about a year ago, we really started putting together the pieces to have better alignment from what was happening in the high school space to what would happen at Ivy Tech or Vincennes University in career and tech ed as well.
What's an interesting trend that you've discovered with your stakeholders that you think will change the way that you work?
I really think, the way in which people feel about post-secondary education and training and how they want to receive that post-secondary education and training, that really seems to be one of the things that we've seen during the pandemic. People really wanting to focus on that shorter-term training that's going to get them back to employment a little bit quicker than what a traditional post-secondary education would look like. I think we've done a good job as a state to shift our focus and expand what we were providing funding for during the pandemic. But I think coming out of it, we're going to see more of that. I think it's really going to change the way that we look at things and how we communicate to people that value of a post-secondary education and how people can access some of that shorter term training with a focus on the stackability of that is something that we need to continue to do. I think with the GPS project that recently was done by Brookings and AEI really highlighted, the fact in Indiana that a number of individuals still believe that a high school diploma is enough to get a good job. And so how we're communicating the value of a post-secondary education and just the needs of our employer community to move our economy forward are the things that we really need to focus on from the state perspective to get more people engaged in that post-secondary education training.
You talked about those short-term credentials, and the legislative session is just wrapped up as we're recording this. We're recording April 29th. We'll release it just a little bit later than that. One of the pieces of legislation that came through is, I think it's called the Invest Indiana Fund. Do you have involvement in that?
I don't know about the Invest Indiana Fund. I mean, the two big programs that I think we're going to have our work cut out for us and to help folks move forward are the READY grants. About $500 million that IEDC is going to be administering to really start to bring communities together to think about how regions are thinking about economic development opportunities, and then how the talent development system needs to come alongside those economic development opportunities. The other piece is the Career Accelerator Fund. There was about $75 million appropriated to Invest Ed.
That's what I'm thinking of. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. To look at establishing some sort of income share agreement program for individuals to take advantage of training that is 6 months or less that leads to employment opportunities that have a per capita income of about $60,000 2 years out on average. So we're actually, still working through that since the legislation was just passed a week ago today, I believe. So it's lots of work being done behind the scenes, and I think we'll be able to figure it all out here in relative short order.
Good. I think the Career Accelerator Fund is a really good example of those short-term credentials and the value that you can find in those short-term credentials.
Yeah, I think our job is going to be to figure out how that interacts with our next level jobs programs and the Workforce Ready Grant program that, Ivy Tech is our primary provider there.
Absolutely.
How are those two things working in unison with one another is going to be important for us to figure out.
And I know we're already talking internally about how to partner on that. So I look forward to seeing that. But I think that's a good future trend for all of us to think about. So we're living through this really unique time with COVID. What do you think your agency or your industry is going to look like post-COVID, thinking about a year from now, maybe 5 years from now? And if you want to be so bold, maybe even 10 years from now?
Yeah, I think in the short term, a year out from now, we're undergoing a lot of change at the state level. Back in January, we just had the first appointed Secretary of Education. I think that will help create better alignment across the state agencies that have a role in the talent development space. It's great to see the level of collaboration amongst the agency heads. I've been at the state now for about 7 years, and I've never seen us working together in the way that we are right now. So I look for that to continue moving forward, probably a better partnership and relationship now that we have an appointed secretary. 5 years from now, I would love to say that, we have figured things out and we know exactly how to stack state and federal funding and programs together in a way that's moving people forward and breaking down those barriers, whether it's food insecurity or childcare or transportation. I think we're getting there, but it's really the conversations really within our strategic plan kicked things off in terms of how we're working better together with those programs. And so, I just look forward to the continued collaboration and really the merger of a lot of programs that seem siloed and separate. But when you look at the needs that people in Indiana have or the folks that we should be serving with these programs, it's really cuts across the board, whether they're on SNAP and TANF, those individuals need help with education and training as well. So figuring out all of those things is really where we need to be 5 years from now.
Thinking more broadly outside of just your own industry, how do you think the future of work is going to look different 5 to 10 years from now?
Yeah, I think if anything, throughout the pandemic, we have seen a lot of manufacturers look to how they can automate and move more in that direction. We have put together grant programs through IEDC to help support employers, with equipment costs and some of those things. There was a line item this legislative session to continue to do that beyond some of the federal relief funding that we've received. But I think indicating to people and communicating that automation does not necessarily lead to job loss. It's just a different type of job that you might be doing in that interaction that humans might have with robots and some of those things. So I think that continued communication on the value of education and how jobs are changing due to technology is something that we have to continue to do, or we're not going to be able to move our economy forward in the way that we want to.
Excellent point. Finally, what do you think higher education and specifically Ivy Tech should be doing to prepare for the future?
I think Ivy Tech is already doing a lot of things. to prepare for that. I think looking at the short-term credentials that are available, whether it's a CT or a TC that stack on into associate degrees, I think we can continue to look for ways how non-credit programs back map and into some credit-bearing programs. I think that's something that we always need to continue to focus on. There's some legislation that passed for us to look at prior learning assessments. I know we're already doing that work with Ivy Tech right now. I'm excited about the career coaching and employer connections piece that Ivy Tech is already implementing. I think that is a critical component to all of this. If people aren't aware of their interest and how they can map to an occupation, I worry that they're not going to seek out that education and training. So being able to communicate those things is important, as well as listening to employers and being able to adjust programs accordingly. I know we've been working with Ivy Tech for the last several months on an Industry 4.0 manufacturing pathway. We'll be implementing that in the high school space this year, and that will align directly to Ivy Tech programs that they'll be starting moving forward. So like I said, I think a lot of the work is being done. It's just, continuing to accelerate, innovate, and look toward continuous improvement. And, I think I'm excited, as long as President Ellspermann is there, I think you guys are going to continue on that path forward and working hand in hand with the state. I think the relationship across the Commission for Higher Ed, Workforce Cabinet, Ivy Tech, and then the other four-year institutions. I think those transfer programs are vital importance as we move forward and talk about the stackability of things and how you can start off at Ivy Tech and then continue on to a bachelor's degree over time is something that's really important.
Excellent. Thank you so much, PJ. It was wonderful to chat with you today. Every episode ends with a call to action. You can learn more about the Governor's Workforce Cabinet at www.in.gov/GWC. That's www.in.gov/GWC.